the name is a play on Press the Juice, then press buy on the website. It's appropriate for the nature of our business, which is we have 400 or so delicious ciders.
Hello, my name is Rhea Wincaller, and I am the producer and cider MC of this weekly podcast, where we speak with makers, cider enthusiasts, and folks within the cider trade from around the world.
Hip, hip, hooray!
Not everyone can lay claim to having 400 delicious ciders at the touch of their hands and ready to ship out to anyone out there in Ciderville. You're going to find out a little bit more about Press Then Press with Eric and Storie Madrid coming up as our featured guest on this week's episode 357. Wow, Mr. Quince, I could tell you're a little bit more excited than normal for this particular episode.
He is.
Yeah, Medlars. Mr. Quince, what's that about?
I know they are quite fond of quince.
Yes, they are. In fact, at the end here, you're going to hear a little special shout out to you and really to all the Talking Palms. You guys are really celebrities in the eyes of Ciderville.
Indeed, Rhea, indeed we are, because we are the Talking Palms.
That's right, Perry, you are. So anyone listening right now for the first time to Cider Chat, if you never heard a Talking Palm, well, allow me to introduce you to Mr. Quince.
Hello.
And the Medlars.
Hello.
And Perry.
Yes, Rhea, you already mentioned me. I think they know who I am. I am Perry.
Spot on, as always, Perry. Anywho, the Talking Palms are in the cider house with me. They help with the behind the scenes, the production and whatnot, and keeping me on task because I could kind of go off on a tangent.
Shall we move along, Rhea?
Well, just hang on, Mr. Quince, just for a second. This particular episode really kind of signify your kind of celebrity status, don't you know?
That's nice.
Yes, it is. And so just for folks who don't really know who the Talking Palms are, Mr. Quince is a quince.
Do you want to share my variety?
No, we'll hold off on that. Quince is a certain type of palm. And in general, palm is spelled as, if it's only an apple, you spell it as P-O-M-M-E. And when you're talking about all the different fruits that are in the same category as apple, you would spell it as P-O-M-E-S. But because you're the Talking Palms, well, we put it as a double M there because you're kind of unique and unusual to have Talking Palms.
You would be surprised, Rhea.
Speaking of which, Perry pears are very unique because they aren't like your typical eating pears. They could be a little
bitter, perhaps, Rhea? Is that what you want to say?
Well, yes. Not that you're bitter, Perry.
Well, I can be.
It's true. But that's for very different reasons. In general, you're not Perry pear.
I didn't think so, but I was just lining you up for a joke, Rhea.
Thanks, Perry. You're so thoughtful. And, of course, there's also the Medlars.
Hello.
Yes, the Medlars are really unique in the category of palm fruit because they're quite unknown. So I really recommend that you look up Medlars. They can grow in a lot of different zones. Of course, we have some Medlars in our orchard, don't we?
Uh-huh.
And we have two different varieties. We have Royal Medlars, and we also have the name, I'm at a loss for it right now. What is it?
Burrito.
Thank you. We have Royal and Burrito, two different varieties of Medlars, and there's lots of different varieties of quince, and there's a lot of different varieties of Perry pears. There's thousands and thousands of varieties of apples. There are, suffice to say, a whole bunch of palms.
But only a few Talking Palms on this show.
Right, Perry pear. And now you know who I have helping me in the cider house and who's kind of chimes in every once in a while. So I think now it's kind of time to move on.
Rolling with a mention of our sponsor.
Sweet, crisp, fresh, or balanced, whatever the cider you want to make, you will find the right yeast for your favorite cider in the Saf Cider range by Fermentis. This week, let's discover Saf Cider A AC4 stands for apple crisp. This yeast is ideal to produce fresh and crisp cider. It ensures a very good assimilation of fructose and is excellent for low-gravity ciders. The results are an intensely fresh aromatic profile, meaning apple and floral, with a crisp mouthfeel, enhancing cider structure. Staff Cider AC4 is the perfect fit for highly fresh and crisp, sweet, and dry ciders. Want to explore diversity of cider profiles? Discover it all through the selection of yeast strains by visiting their website, fermentis.com. Cider Chat is listener-supported. That means that it really relies on you out there in Ciderville to be supporting the podcast so I can keep on rolling it out like I have been for the past 7 years. So it's always cool when people discover Cider Chat and really tune in. And we have a new patron as a result, and her name is Rachel. So I asked a few questions from patrons, and I actually met Rachel at CiderCon 2023, which was super, super cool. And she mentions a little bit about Fermentis, but let's go into this little piece here that she wrote. I asked her how she found out about the podcast, and she writes, I was looking for information on cider production on the internet and thought for sure someone had a cider podcast series. And sure enough, your podcast popped up. The thing that surprised me was how long you have been going. I started listening at the tail end of season 7. I asked her to tell me a little bit about her journey with cider, and she writes that she discovered cider in 2007 after having to make the decision to go gluten-free. Woodchuck cider was really the only brand available in Denver, Colorado, where she lived at the time, and she remembered loving their selections. Then went on a hiatus from cider for a long time. Now, just so you know, Woodchuck is one of the brands that has been around for quite a long time. In fact, it was the only brand out there on the shelves. For many of us, myself included, we'd be in like a cider desert, and you could be guaranteed to reach into a cooler, some store in Nowheresville, America, and find a Woodchuck, which was, you got it. It's so cool. So tip of the hat to Woodchuck. Anywho, so she went on a hiatus from cider for a long time, and then last year took a job in Texas with her wife and was relocating from San Antonio. She wanted property with land and found a property northeast of Plano, Texas, with a cute house, 5 acres, and a small orchard with mostly peaches and pear trees. The peaches they picked, processed, and froze, and they made bourbon peach smashes and peach crumbles. The pears were a different story. They didn't seem good for eating. Oh, boy. You hear that, pear?
Indeed I do, Rhea. We know what that means.
Yeah. She goes on with, our neighbors told stories of the previous owners giving them away because they weren't good eating pears. One day, I got the bright idea to buy a cider press and make pear cider, a.k.a. Perry. So I bought one of the old-fashioned presses made of wood with a hand crank grinder and a screw press. We picked the pears, let them ripen, ground, and pressed them up. I bought a cider kit to give me a quick rundown of how to make cider. We ended up with 8 gallons that I fermented, 7 of which were fermented with Fermentis Staff Cider AB1. Remember, AB stands for Apple Balance. So that's super cool, Rachel. After fermentation and letting the perry mature, we thought it tasted pretty good. I've been wanting to start a business and had investigated some other industries. Cider and perry production have captured my focus. We are planning a cidery. We've got trees on order to plant this spring to expand the orchard. I'm working through the permitting process with the TTB at the moment and then the Texas Alcohol and Beverage Commission after that. Kenneth and Denise from White Cider in Wichita, Kansas have offered to give us a tour of their production facility. We are well on our way, even though this is just the beginning. Yes, the beginning of a great adventure. Good luck with all that. I'm super excited to hear how your orchard does in Texas because my mind, my New England-based mind, has a hard time wrapping her head around that idea. And in terms of your perry pears, which it sounds like you have, one thing that we've learned from John Bunker in particular is he always cooks the palms that he gets, to kind of get a different idea of what they can deliver. So you might want to try that with the pears. I've had pear pie. I really like it. If they are really like bitter pears, then you might have to add something to it. But, you have everything to gain to just cook up a couple, see what it reveals, and that might really impact your fermentation down the line. And in terms of working with pears, fermenting them, most folks in the U.S. are fermenting with culinary pears, which are a really different beast than peri pears. And so they have to have a little bit more fuss to it. But the makers I know who are fermenting with peri pears, they don't fuss. I mean, they just let the pears go. They kind of have their own drive, and they're not really worried about citric acid and all those things. They just let it go. But, of course, I could learn more about it, too, and I will keep on pursuing that for you to see what we could get. There is one particular family that I think about in general when it comes to pears, because in their region they have something called a pear fair, and that's out by the Sacramento region of California. We do have sparsely populated peri pear fermenters, and also commercial makers who make it, but they don't have enough peri pears to sell it commercially. So I will keep on going down that rabbit hole to see what I can find out for you, because obviously we have a fondness for peri pears.
I think once you find a peri pear, you do not want to let go.
That's so true, Perry. That is so true. So thanks again for becoming a patron to Cider Chat. And those listening out there in Ciderville, if this podcast brings you value, please do consider becoming a patron too. This is listener-supported podcasting. We really rely on listener-supported podcasts so I could keep on rolling them out, these episodes, each and every week. You could do that by just Googling Patreon, which is a website that Rachel signed up to. That's spelled Patreon. Or you could also hit the donate button at ciderchat.com. Both sites allow you to gauge in what you can offer the podcast in terms of support. There's no hard and fast rules there. Every little bit helps to keep cider going up. Up next, we're going to be rolling to our featured presentation with Press Then Press. You're going to be hearing from the couple behind this. Their names are Storie and Eric Madrid, and they're based in Seattle, and they also have their sister, or I should say at least Storie's sister, Ashley, on board too. It's a really interesting concept, having cider sales, and I see this quite a bit all on social media. Folks are saying, how can I get this cider? Well, I want to tell you, they have an option for you with over 400 plus ciders from the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, throughout the entire U.S., and also imported ciders too. So if you have a hankering for a cider that is not available in your area, and you'd like to support folks in the cider trade who are making this available, a wide selection of ciders and perries available to an area that might otherwise not be able to ship that into their region, you want to bookmark pressthenpress.com. They'll be able to tell you about how it's a little bit different than cider clubs that particular cideries have for an offering. Those are good options too. This kind of takes it way out of that sphere and into a whole different category. And in addition, I really want you to hear about how they are helping an organization, a nonprofit in Seattle, get fruit off the streets and into the hands of people in need, and also preserving some of those select fruits that can be fermented. So there's a lot to it. This is a very good time to grab a glass and join this chat with Eric and Storie Madrid of Press Then Press.
We acquired Press Then Press just a few months ago. Business itself is a couple of years old, but we took over ownership of it just here in November, so it's been 3 full months of us running the shop. And the name we inherited, and the name is a play on Press the Juice, then Press Buy on the website. It's appropriate for the nature of our business, which is we have 400 or so delicious ciders, mostly Pacific Northwest, West Coast, ciders from around the U.S. and around the world, and we ship them to almost everywhere U.S. So
it's a beautiful model, and the fact that you're able to get it to a lot of cider-starved regions is a kind thing to do. So thank you for that. Because there's, yet again, I see online, hey, how can I get ciders? There's no ciders in my area. Or I'm going to this, moving there, and I don't want to move there because there's no cider. So now people have an option, which is awesome.
Yeah.
400 plus ciders.
Give or take. I'd have to do an exact count.
Wow.
So the inventory is shrinking and growing at the same time. So there's a lot of products that are in the shop now that we likely won't continue to carry. A lot of canned products that are widely distributed that just doesn't make sense to try and sell online. We don't make enough money off of them when people do try and buy them, but for the most part, people have access to those ciders locally, so they don't come to us. So at the same time, we're bringing in anything we can get that we know is good, that we enjoy, that's either a good cider or an interesting product. And so we've added a lot of labels over the last 3 short months and have a lot more in plan. So
what are some of your offerings? What are and are there offerings that are really sought after over and over again?
A lot of Pacific Northwest ciders, a lot of California ciders, some good ciders out of British Columbia. The imported stuff that we have access to, a lot of French products, Spanish products.
French products.
Yeah, and that's a good answer to your question about what moves repeatedly. I think the French ciders, people on the East Coast or in the Southeast, a lot of stuff comes through our shop to those areas that they have some exposure to some good French ciders, and they find us, and we're one of the few ways they can get their hands on that. So the international products that are a little more well-known end up coming through our shop quite a bit, whether it's French or English, Spanish. And there's a couple of cider makers on the West Coast that have great brand recognition, especially if people have visited, say, Sea Cider in British Columbia on a cruise out of Seattle or through Vancouver. They've been out on the orchard. They just locked into their memories as a beautiful orchard experience. And so we sell a lot of Sea Cider, which we have access to in Seattle. So
very interesting. So, because I know with the current, state of affairs coming out of COVID and shipping, UK ciders are kind of tough to ship out. What are some of the brands?
We have some older stuff that's been around from Oliver's, which is awesome, even though it's a few years old. There's some Hennies that we have access to still. Dunkertons. That's the one that we can get regularly and we know is younger, more fresh. But we do have stuff coming in to us via Ancho distributors or Ancho imports. So we're getting more recent Tom Oliver's releases and some little Pomona stuff in any day now. So that'll be really exciting. Personally, just want to be able to drink more of that. So to have in the shop, because I know how good it is and it's sought after. So
totally excited. But people should know that, as far as I'm concerned, I don't drink my cider for sometimes 3 years, and that's where it might start showing itself. And Barrick Bordelais doesn't open the ciders, some of the ciders for 10 plus years, and it'll say, okay, now it's finally ready. How do you select the ciders that you sell?
A majority of the ciders we pick what we want to drink. But we also, we're cognizant of bringing in a wide variety of cider that's going to fit anyone's palate, whether you're a new cider drinker or you're a longtime cider enthusiast that likes to geek out on stuff like we do. A range of sweetness levels and tannins and acid, really trying to hit on, there's a cider for everyone that wants to drink that you're going to like. You may not know it yet, but hopefully we can help you find that one.
So is it orchard-based to modern, the whole gamut, or?
For the most part, we're focusing in on more orchard-based or cideries that can tell us the story of where their apples came from, what the apples they're using are, and the process and the orchard, how they were grown. Anyone that could speak to that.
Yeah, if the fruit is thoughtfully sourced and the product is good, no matter the range of modern to traditional and anything, we'll carry fruit flavored ciders even though it's not something we would typically drink, so long as the cider maker can tell us about where they got the fruit, what fruit is in it, what apple varieties are in it ideally, what orchards they came from. It doesn't have to be an orchard-based cider maker, but if they're thoughtful about how they get their fruit and what fruit they use. And then we have to be cognizant of our own biases. We drink primarily dry, tannic, just straight apple, but as we explore some of the stuff on the other side of the spectrum, as long as the palm fruit is still central to the flavor experience, if it's got other fruit in it, we'll feature those. But not a lot of the ciders that are back sweetened with syrups and a medley of culinary apples those just aren't necessarily a great fit for us. We want it to be something closer to what we think will get people into the types of ciders that we love most. Still carry as wide of a variety as possible.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I was going to ask you, where do you ship? But maybe the better question is to ask, where don't you ship? Because that's probably a short list.
Yeah, it's a short list. There's 5.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
We have them shut off on our website, so you can't. There's 5 states we don't ship to, and I don't even remember which ones they are.
Probably
Utah.
That's the
Mississippi.
obvious one.
Utah.
Yeah.
You know we love you, Utah. I want to
wish.
get out there and drink cider with you.
We'll get there. There'll be one day, but for the time being, there's 5 states we don't ship to. And
Only 5 states. Okay. Well, that's out of 50. Do you ship to in like American territories like Puerto Rico?
No, we had someone try and order some cider in Hawaii, and we can do it, but it's just not cost effective.
Prohibitive, yeah. Okay. Well, all you can say is you try.
Right.
And that's the goal of
Yeah.
everything. Let's hear a little bit about Storie's background in cider.
Yeah, sure. So back in 2009, I figured out that I had a gluten intolerance, and Eric and I were really getting into craft beer at the time. So it was a real bummer. And then we were at an event, and we went to the beer garden, me thinking, okay, I'm just gonna hang out while Eric drinks some beer, and Finn River Cider was there pouring their cider. They were like pretty brand new at the time. And I was like, oh, here's something I can actually drink, and it's good, and it's not like these other ciders that I had that were, mass market available at the time. So something just clicked, and from there it was just me seeking out cider everywhere I could find it, which back then was, it wasn't easy. You couldn't just find it anywhere. And we kind of we started doing a lot of traveling that was really cider focused. We went to the Basque Country in Spain for our honeymoon, and then kind of just started arranging travel around cider, whether that was throughout the U.S. or we both went to the UK and did our own little tour through Herefordshire, had all of those ciders. Then I went on your cider tour.
First ever French cider tour, yeah.
Yeah, in Normandy, and that was for me like an aha. I think I want to work in this cider industry. I kind of been thinking about it, and we'd always kind of talked about doing something else, and we just never really knew what it was we wanted to do. And we started planning and plotting, and we just started really both getting into a lot more cider. And let's see, we both.
Can I ask you, what was it on the French trip that gave you the aha? What part of that experience was like nudged you along to say, dang, this is what I want to do?
I mean, a lot of it is the people, the cider people, and the people that are on that tour, and everyone. The culture of cider, I think, is just, it's so inclusive and just fun. And
well, that's a good enough reason.
The overall, I think everything that we learned too. I didn't have a lot of experience at all with French cider before going on that tour, and wow, now it's like, I seek them out.
Yeah, for sure.
But, yeah.
Cool. And how about you, Eric? What's your journey here?
following on the coattails of Storie primarily, and like she mentioned, a lot of our traveling, which she mentioned the places we intentionally went to abroad to find cider, but same goes for our U.S. travels. And as we hit different corners of the country and experience their cider, we would constantly sign up for new clubs, and we still, even though we own Press Then Press and have an abundance of cider at all times, we get 6 or 7 different quarterly shipments from some of our favorites across the U.S., and we just kept drinking cider. And I think crossing the chasm between loving cider and wanting to be into cider is one of the things that we're really drawn to do, is helping other people find cider and exposing them to what really craft, well-made cider is, and by extension of that, delicious apple varieties and the history of cider making. And our wedding 12, 13 years ago was up in the San Juan Islands in Washington State, Orcas Island, and there are now a few really good cider makers out of the San Juan Islands in the U.S. and BC, San Juan Islands, some great cider makers there. But when our wedding at the Orcas Hotel on Orcas Island, we featured a Westcott Bay cider was part of our wedding party, and everybody loved it and would keep asking questions. And at that point, Storie had been drinking cider for years, and we've just kind of blossomed from there in helping people find good cider. And
not making cider. Neither of you make cider, right?
We've tried, but
yeah.
Philippe and Alpenfire, all of our favorite friends in the cider industry nearby are so much better that it would almost be offensive to them for us to try and take our product to market, because it's nowhere near as good.
Yeah, but I mean, look at the service that you're doing. You're getting it out to people and all these different avenues. So
we've done plenty of experimenting on the home cider making, and nothing great there. But yeah, as Storie and I have gotten more into cider, we planned on opening a bottle shop and tasting room in Seattle that was cider focused, and the pandemic paused those plans.
Was that your first plan before going with Press Then Press? You were going to just do a bottle shop?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember talking to you about that.
Right. We were at CiderCon in Oakland networking and telling everybody about our plans and learning as much as we could to launch that. Had a branding project done, started shopping for space. Pandemic paused it. We have a beautiful baby boy that paused and slowed down our plans. But part of our networking with the anticipation of opening a shop, we met Chris, the former owner of Press Then Press, who had this great idea for a business that he had rolled out but was moving and needed to hand it off. And so he approached us, and we're honored that he did, because it gives us an opportunity to take over the reins and put our own spin on it and make it ours. And it's been fun already, and it's allowed us to do what we had begun to do in our inner circles. And most of the time we spend on the business today is talking to customers about what their preferences are, and emails back and forth. Mm-hmm. And what do you love about cider? What have you had that you liked, disliked? How do you feel about sweetness levels, tannin levels, acid levels, and exploring those combos and packing a box full of them and shipping it wherever they are. It's just like
So all the boxes, it's not like these T-shirt kind of places where you could like put the order in and the T-shirts never come to your site. All the cider's coming to your site.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, we don't do drop shipping. It's we have a warehouse with all the cider in it already. Storie we've rolled out a club where we have quarterly releases of specific cider themes, and that's fun. And we put together little mixed kits, and people can otherwise just browse the collection themselves and pick and choose and fill their own box.
Oh my goodness, wow. What does it smell like in that warehouse? I know that it's not open bottles.
It actually...
Yeah.
Okay, I should tell.
It actually smells like apples, but not because of our
business. Not because of us. So, part of my cider journey is I'm on the board of directors for a very cool nonprofit in Seattle called City Fruit, which deserves a minute here. It's an awesome organization. We manage the urban orchard, is the easiest way to describe it, whether it's public parks or private homeowners. They register their fruit trees with us, and we take care of those trees. We harvest those trees, or we might drop off bins for people to load up with their excess if they do their own harvest. Mm-hmm. And we managed to defer over 50,000 pounds of fresh local fruit from going to waste to the community, local food banks, meal programs, student meal programs, Fruit for All giveaways throughout the city of Seattle. There's a percentage of that fruit that isn't good for eating, crab apples, cider apples, and we sell those to cider makers in the Seattle community that use it to make really fascinating products that are hyper-local and delicious, and it helps support the organization's growth.
Beautiful thing. Wow.
And then annually we have a big party called Celebrates, and there's 20 or so cider makers there that pour cider, whether it includes city fruits harvest or not. But the point being, to answer your question, what does it smell like in our warehouse? We happen to share building space with City Fruit, and so for 3-4 months a year, it just smells glorious. Like we're in the middle of this warehouse space in downtown Seattle, but it smells like we're on an orchard or a farm because there's so much fruit just down the hall.
That, it's amazing how much, like, it's been like a kind of almost like a slow rumble up to this point, but it's all directions have been leading you to some type of integration into the cider trade. And I really find that fascinating. I don't really recall you telling me about City Fruits before. And
no, I don't think so.
Holy smokes. I mean, you're sitting on that. That's part of your story here for what you do in Press Then Press. My goodness, you guys are really like integrated big time.
Yeah.
And what a beautiful thing to be doing.
It's a great project, and we haven't promoted it yet, but it's one of those organizations that will forever be supported by the success of Press Then Press. Like, we have limits based on state liquor laws on how much of our sales can go directly to charitable contributions, at least advertise a portion of proceeds. But as soon as we took the business over, a portion of proceeds of all sales went to that, and that's something we want to expand on, to have regular, whether it's monthly or quarterly. Here are the nonprofits that sales of cider through Press Then Press support, but City Fruit was obvious choice day one to be part of that.
How long has City Fruits been in operation at this kind of level?
I don't know the exact. It's close to 10 years.
More than that, I think.
More than that, maybe 12 years or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, that's really cool, and thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
Both of you, it's like it's huge. And for folks who don't know these two, this does not tell us everything about who they are and business that in turn. That's how the cycle of life goes in terms of helping each other out, and that's why you want to, support businesses like yours. It's cool to have an online shop and not have to have a in-person shop, but at the same time, it's cool to have an in-person shop and all the people that you get to meet in person.
We do still want to have an in-person shop, and that is in the 5-year plan. We just don't know exactly when in that 5 years it's going to be. It just keeps kind of getting pushed back. I think we've got to we're really focused on Press Then Press right now.
Okay.
So down the road, for sure.
Yeah. No pressure.
Yeah. We'd love to. It's still a gap in even a great cider culture like Seattle. There's still room for a bottle shop tasting room that has a great variety of options, focuses on the types of cider that we want to focus on featuring. And we'll get there. It's still hopefully it's closer to the 1 to 2 year plan than the 5-year plan, but it's our main dream and goal. But to have these supplemental businesses would be awesome, and they could certainly help each other in obvious ways. But we want to get to a point where we can sit and share cider with people. And part of our current business model is to host tastings locally in the Seattle area, and that's great, but we want to have a space that people can come and we can just pop bottles, pour off tap, and help people find their way in cider if they're newly exploring it, but also if they're enthusiasts and longtime cider drinkers, just be thrilled at the selection we have. So the brick and mortar is still in the plans.
Selection. Yeah. My goodness.
But the more immediate future for our business is, we're here at CiderCon in Chicago this year to find cider makers from other parts of the country that we may or may not know already, but love their stuff and love their story, and can find a way to get them into Washington State so they can be part of our shop and feature that, because it'd be incredible for us to roll out a 6-pack of single variety ciders from the same apple, but from 6 different regional terroirs, and just, I mean, that's a level of nerdiness that might only be for a handful of customers, but if that is the most extreme edge on one side of what our cider shop offers, and everything up to that point is also part of it, that would be incredible. But
Sure would be.
we have a pretty unique opportunity to fill a lot of gaps for people, and you can buy cider from so many cider makers online, but you can't get a mixed box from a variety of them and from a variety of regions like you can through our shop. So the next couple of years we'll be bringing in as many new cider makers as our customer demand for our shop allows.
That's a good point. Yeah, you could, get one set of cider from a cider maker, but that mixed pack is really nice. Especially, I wonder if you do any type of setup where you're able to have an on-site tasting of like all one single varietal or one particular style. You're nodding your head, so I'm guessing you do.
Yeah, we'd like to. So we have local customers that want us to host tastings with them, and we'll start doing that. And whether it's that type of customer transaction or just sending them a box wherever in the U.S., we take some direction on what do they want in this shipment, and do you want a bunch of single variety apples? Do you want the same apple from different producers? Do you want a mixed bag? We pre-package some mixed packs that are already up on the shop that include some interesting ways to explore a variety of ciders, but we'll cater to somebody too if they have some requests or just a hint of an idea that we can dive into with them. So.
Well, there you go. Just from your little armchair, you could go cider shopping at Press Then Press, and it's pressthenpress.com.
Yep.
Where can folks follow you on like social media?
We have the same Press Then Press handle on Instagram and Facebook. Most of our active engagement with people has been over email and on Instagram. We're lagging on responding to people on Facebook, but once in a while we get back to those folks. But Instagram and email, interestingly, I spend a lot of time responding to emails. Storie does too. So that's the best. So if anybody jumps on our website and does nothing else but subscribes to the newsletter, we only send out 1 or 2 a month. It's usually, here's some cool little kits we've put together. Here's what's new in the shop. We try and include something informative about cider with each newsletter, and we get a lot of replies to those, and it creates a conversation that's akin to somebody walking into the cider shop for the first time. That's where we engage with people the most.
Very nice.
Because one of our goals is to help educate people on cider and what cider is and what it really can be. This is how wonderful cider is. We want to celebrate it. It's been fun trying to teach people. We've got an interesting model, I think, with doing everything online, and we do get a surprising amount of people who email us, can you guys just put something together for me? And we're like, okay, and tell us a little more. I actually didn't expect that, but there isn't. We do. So we have an option. You can just email us, which happens all the time, or there's an option for just curated cider. Tell us how much you want to spend, any taste preferences you want, and we'll put something together, and it's a lot of fun.
My goodness. Wow, when Web3 comes in, I'll be able to show up in my little avatar and walk through your little online shop.
Yeah.
Right? Coming down the pike, and won't that be sweet? It could be talking to Storie there, as if we're standing in your little brick and mortar and looking at your bottles on the wall. I mean, this is the future coming, right?
Yeah.
Which is kind of a key thing to be thinking about when you're in the online commerce, which most cider makers to a certain degree are. But to scale that up for an actual shop, we'll save that conversation for another day.
It's a good idea. I like it.
I just love seeing you, and what an awesome opportunity to be able to do this in person, to see that. I know that knowing who you are, your character, and your palate, most importantly, you're really providing a service for the cider community on top of having a small business. So, listeners out there in Ciderville, go to pressthenpress.com and reach out to Storie or Eric. And also, you have another person. Should we give a little shout out who else is working with you?
Yeah, my sister Ashley is helping us we wouldn't have been able to do this without her.
Yeah,
We've
not
got our
at all.
hands a little full.
So it's a family business, which is right on.
Yeah. We have our own full-time jobs still, and we do every night. We're working on something for the website and placing orders for new product, but tasting stuff and trying to come up with good tasting notes for every product on our shop. And if it weren't for Ashley fulfilling all these orders for us, it wouldn't be possible.
That's fantastic.
And she's a chef by training, and so we have some cool things that we want to do with cider and food pairings, both in our online presence and in-person opportunities too. So cool collaborations and events that we want to do. So this week at CiderCon, I've told so many people we have more plans than progress, but we've got some cool ideas, and we're moving forward on as many of them as we can, and very excited about it. So
Cool. And I met Ashley, and she's lovely too. Okay, well, you heard it. PressThenPress.com. Sign up for their newsletter and order some cider today.
we have a lot of Quince products. Mr. Quince.
Oh my gosh. Well. Did you catch that tip of the glass to our one and only Mr. Quince?
Quinces are so popular right now, I'm thinking of changing my name to Steve Quince Martin.
You don't have to be, anything other than Mr. Quince. Hey, Poms, I've got a little joke for you, since we're on a little bit of a roll here.
I wouldn't consider that a roll, Rhea, but go ahead.
Mr. Quince may be a talking palm on a Cider Chat podcast, but I think he's more than that. He's a quintessential character.
I like it.
Thank you, Medlars.
He's got wit, and he's got that certain quince qua that we all love.
I see that you've all been practicing maybe without me.
No, Mr. Quince. You are our reigning comedian.
You're the fruit of the hour.
Shall we move on?
Yes, Mr. Quince. Let's move on.
Walking through the orchards.
Ross-on-Wye Cider and Perry Company is based in the UK in Ross-on-Wye. If you haven't ever had any of their ciders or Perrys, you are in for a treat. And if you have had them, you are in the know. The U Tree Pub there, right on the land site of Ross-on-Wye, is an amazing little pub where you could get a whole bevy of drinks. They've had like over 80 single varietal ciders there. The Johnson family runs this operation, and they are a must-know cidery. Definitely put them in your book, okay? Trust me. Believe me. Coming back to the U.S., Space Time Meat and Cider Works based in Dunmore, Pennsylvania. Now, Dunmore is kind of on the eastern side. It's really next to Scranton, Pennsylvania, so it's right up the highway, easy on, easy off. You could have a couple tastes there. They have a range of ciders. They have wine. They have mead. They have cheese to go and some nice merch with a whole, space-time theme. Follow them on Instagram. You're going to be definitely amused and inspired to check out their product. I want to switch over to Japan. I'm naming all these folks because these folks are supporters of Cider Chat via the Cider Chat Patreon page for commercial operations. And one of those is Insider Japan, Japan's first and only bilingual magazine dedicated to all things cider. Check it out. Go online, look it up, because there's some good stuff happening in Japan. I recently had a really nice cider collab with a U.S. maker and a Japanese maker. Yeah, they're gonna just come out of the gate just roaring. What you could see coming out of that country, and Insider Japan is your touchstone for that info. There is a page at ciderchat.com called Cider Going Up, and so you could get a list of all these cideries that are supporting the podcast each and every month. Another one in the U.S. is Esoterra Cider Works, and that is based in Dolores, Colorado. So you're talking about the southwest section of Colorado. And if you follow their feed on Instagram, you will see that they are so forward-thinking, really community-oriented. It's a place that anyone could show up and feel welcomed at. And boy, isn't that like an oasis out in the desert, Really. I mean, that Four Corners region, finding cider that's really good in an area that you would think otherwise, they are there. So Esoterra Cider Works. do put that in your little bookmark. Let's roll back to the East Coast here to Pennsylvania, Western Pennsylvania, to Taddy Bogle Cider Works. They're based in Acme, Pennsylvania. Kurt Henry is a proprietor there, working with his family. He has a cider for everyone. He has these like little small batch ciders, so you should definitely ask him about that. If you are a cider aficionado, what does he have rolling out? He has a little experimental orchard. It's a beautiful place to go and have a picnic, about 45 minutes outside of Pittsburgh. Then we're going to roll all the way over to the Pacific Coast to Olympic Bluffs Cidery. That's in Port Angeles in Washington State. This is owned by Scott and Ginger. They were on the French cider tour, and they were serving our country for many, many years, doing some outstanding stuff. At some point, I'm going to have a sit-down chit-chat with them. They're opening this cidery and already supporting Cider Chat. So that means the world to me. They're outstanding people. I hope that y'all get to meet them at some point and drink their cider. Recently, I was having a cider from a commercial cidery based in Ohio. We're sending a lot of love to Ohio. Bent Ladder Cider and Wine in Doylestown, Ohio. And they have a whole spread of cider apples there, making an heirloom, a farm cider, different 750 ml bottles that you could try. I'm going to be talking about that. I'm saving one of the bottles for one of my bottles on my desk at Chit Chat. And then we're going to swing over to like the Bink Oomfa over in London, Duck Chicken Cider, based in South London. Colleen and James making cider in their South London flat. They have like the High Royalty Award for having the only dry cider in a can in the UK. And that's called Giggle Juice, and it's delicious. It's delicious. It makes me just want to hop on a plane and get over there, drink some Giggle Juice right now. I need it. I definitely need it in my system. And then I'd like to also thank the American Cider Association, which is part of the Cider Going Up campaign. They are supporting Cider Chat, and it's really an honor to have them on board. They do so much for cider makers all across the board. They do stuff for cider media like me to support it. And believe me, if we want to keep cider in the media, well, the cider media needs support. So thank you for everything that you do there and supporting us here. And of course, our premier featured guest this week, Press Then Press. They're also part of the Cider Going Up campaign. I want to say Storie Madrid, she's been on the Patreon page like forever. And, you know, I didn't know who she was. And then when I finally got to like sit and drink a ton of cider with her in France, I was like, oh my gosh, she's so beautiful. Such a lovely person. My faith in humanity is always restored by the beautiful people who are listeners of Cider Chat and the folks who sign up for the Patreon page at the commercial level, and the many folks that have ebbed and flowed through the years becoming patrons. It's you who is helping keep cider going up around the world and providing me a platform to be able to keep on rolling that out. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Spring is on its way here in North America, and all those blossoms are for you. And to all our dear friends in the Southern Hemisphere, well, don't you know? It's cider making time, right? You've just gone to the middle of the summer, and now you're into the fall, and yeah, you're rocking it too. What a beautiful world. What a beautiful world indeed. And with that, I leave you here. This is Rio in Color and the Talking Palms.
Hello.
Looking forward to seeing you in Ciderville.
We like cider, we like palms, we love orchards and having fun. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we do it like this. Oh yes there is. There is a reason why we drink it like this. Oh yes there is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet. We like cider. like ponds. We like orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this.
Oh, yes, there is.
There is a reason why we do it like this.
Oh, yes, there is.
There is a reason why we drink it like this.
Oh, yes, there is.
There is a reason. We like walking through the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet.
Oh, yeah.
We like cider.
Oh, yes, we do.
We like ponds.
Oh, yes, we do.
We love orchards, having some fun. There is a reason why we do it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
There's a reason why we do it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
There is a reason why we drink it like this.
Ba-da-da-dum.
Ba-da-da-dum. We like walking down the orchards, dancing in the streets, smelling all the blossoms, kicking up our feet.
Oh, yeah.
We like cider.
Ba-da-da-dum.
We like ponds.
Oh, yes, we do.
We like orchards, having some fun.
Yeehaw!